Welcome back to TrueNAS Tech Talk. This week, Chris and I are taking a sneak peek ahead at the alerts overhaul coming in TrueNAS 26. We're going to have contextual guidance, some better icons and badges, as well as categories to help you manage your TrueNAS system more effectively and deal with problems when they do crop up. We're also going to dive into some viewer questions, from scale-out storage to AMD GPU support for ROCm. Stay tuned.
Hey folks, welcome to this week's episode. We got some good stuff to get to, but before we do, again, reminder, go hit those like and subscribe buttons. We need you to do that. Otherwise, I might force Chris to join the dark side with me and run without ECC memory on all of his storage systems.
Not
That
happening.
might make you sad. Not happening? Oh gosh.
Not happening.
Then you better go like and subscribe then, because Chris isn't going to let that happen.
Oh boy, yeah. Not happening. I saw a great comment in one of our older videos about that, actually saying, somebody was claiming they needed an ECC for their gaming machine. I've heard of complaining about the controller, but blaming memory errors for your skill issue, that's a new one to me. So we got some good stuff coming up today. We're going to be talking about some of the user experience and user interface in TrueNAS 26 that's going to be released hopefully shortly. This is one of those items, I guess, Chris, you've been working on improving this. The technical aspects of ZFS are fantastic, but part of what, really makes TrueNAS is putting a nice way to manage all of this stuff, as well as give you, some better alerting and information. So it's a two-way system. It's great for us to give you all sorts of knobs to turn, but the system also needs to give you feedback about what turning those knobs and, what's going on with the system under the hood. So how about you give us a little bit of a preview here, Chris? I understand you made a bit of an overhaul.
It's one of those things where it's like, how you say something is sometimes just as important as what you say. Same idea with good user experience here. And this is frankly one of those areas of the software we've wanted to go make some changes to for a while now. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the alert system. So anybody who's run TrueNAS for a while now knows the alert system's pretty powerful. It tells you a lot of different things, but it's one of those areas we knew we could do a better job at just guiding users through. There's a bit of a learning curve because you'll get thrown an alert. What does this mean? Okay, where do I go? What do I do? All that good stuff, right? And you kind of figure it out over time. But again, a little bit of a learning curve. So in 26, we had an opportunity to go make some big improvements here with the introduction of more context-aware alerting throughout the UI. So what does context-aware alerting mean? Well, really it means a couple different things in practice. First, in the alert menu itself, alerts are going to have greater contextual information about what the alert actually is. And then the UI can help guide you on where you need to go in the UI to address the cause of the alert. So no more guesswork like, oh, I had a failed replication. Let's see, where do I go to find the replication? Okay, let me go find that, navigate, and then find the section, and then maybe the right widget to go and address whatever the alert's about, right? So that's one aspect. The second aspect is the idea of having alert icons appear directly in the UI in their relevant section. So instead of having kind of a one-size-fits-all, there's an alarm and an alert button top right, where everything gets shoved into there, it's nice to have a little bit of visual feedback in the UI that points you in the right direction. It draws your eye towards, I should go click over here and look because something is alarming in this particular page that needs my attention, right? That's just, you don't have to think about it as hard.
That's kind of like how we had the context-aware search, where you would search for a particular, term or keyword. You could click on it and you'd get a highlight around the next area that you needed to click. So,
it seems like something small. It seems like, oh, who's going to pay attention to that? But once you start using it, you're like, how did I do it before without this? This just makes it so much easier. It makes it feel fluid. I don't have to think too hard. The system's just guiding you towards resolution or whatever the alert is telling you to go resolve. So now, obviously, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But maybe a video is worth 1,000,000 or something. We need to update that. So either way, we do have some examples because some of this has merged into the 26 nightlies already. So if you're an adventurous one, and again, on the development side here, we're always running the nightlies and we're breaking things and trying new things and getting to run all the latest goodness, which is in preparation for beta coming up here in April. But if you're on it, great. If not, we can kind of take a moment and show you a little bit of what this looks like. So let's click over here, Chris, and we'll start with the first video here showing us how the alert panel is going to look. So that's that first section, the existing alert panel, how it's been updated to have context awareness. And as you can see diving in here, it looks a little busier at first. There's a lot more color and a lot more information visible telling you not only what the alert text is, which is what we had before, but what it means, why does it matter? Why am I seeing this? That's a huge improvement. What does this alert even mean? Like, help me out, And
how
then how
How many things do we break on this system to get this many warnings, Chris? Like we went
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
our way.
So maybe I should caveat this before we get too deep in. Your system should never have this many alerts. If you do have this many alerts, please seek help, because this is a unhappy system. Obviously, for demo purposes, we're going to go fire all the alerts off all at once because we're testing it and we're trying to demonstrate. But hopefully, you're only ever seeing one or two of these or none if your system's in a healthy, happy state. But for demo purposes, this is great.
Yeah.
But as you can see here, it's got nice little buttons that says, "Ooh, there's something going on here with a standby node. Go click this button to take you to that page." Or there's a license issue. Click here to go manage the license differently or change something or contact support. All that good stuff on the enterprise side. But you can imagine how helpful that is, because now you don't have to go hunt and find. Okay, next video here. So the alert panel actions, that's just diving a little deep in here, showing you what you can do on the alert panel, which is very helpful.
Yeah, again, you can see you got that little bit of a glow around there when you click on the options to try and fix it. You can show further details in there about whether or not you got an issue. And you can also dive into a link to documentation or even contact our support team where it's appropriate. It'll just take you straight to the correct page.
No, that's super important. It's about giving you the contextual awareness too, so you know what the best course of action is here. Again, less guesswork. And I can already hear some of the power users, "Oh, it was fine the way it was. I already know everything." Yeah, again, you're experienced. You know the 747 cockpit. For somebody coming in new to the ecosystem, that's pretty daunting the first time you set that in front of them. So our job is to make it easier. And also, frankly, even if as a power user, I don't want to have to overthink and remember, because I have a lot of systems I have to go take care of and babysit and administrate. And so if the easier TrueNAS makes it, my life just gets better.
Yeah, even things as simple as having the alerts down your sidebar there to let you know, hey, I've got problems in this area. You've got that top banner up at the top there giving you a warning like, hey, you may want to look at these particular things. And again, if you're a power user and you know what you're looking for when you get that alert, that's fine. All you've got is that, dismissible banner at the top. But it's additional guidance. Like they say, 10,000 people learn something new every day. And hey, one of these lucky 10,000 is going to be assisted by this. And if you're not one of them, hey, that's great. Be happy for those who are going to have a better TrueNAS experience overall.
Absolutely. Well, let's push ahead to now showing where the contextual badges show up in the UI. And again, a demo system, so there's an awful lot of red here just to give you an idea where alerts could potentially appear. Hopefully your system doesn't look like this. Seek help if it does. But all that to say, it is pretty nice here to see, right on the left menu. That's the main way we go navigate around the TrueNAS UI. You can see how you're going to log in. Your eyes immediately going to be drawn to, there's a red, exclamation over here. What does that mean? Or a warning, a yellow triangle, a caution triangle sort of. Okay, I'm now, you have my interest. I'm curious, what is going on here? Before I've even potentially hit the alerts button top right, I'm already being guided into the section to say there's potentially something going wrong here. And as you click in, you see, you get the nice banners up at the top telling you what the alert's about, what's going on. And now you can go and potentially solve your problem much quicker. Again, little things, a lot of work goes into making these little things polished and streamlined, though, and make them work so well. But it just helps give you that much more polished overall TrueNAS experience.
If we go to the next section, you can look at them and say, hey, what happens? I talked about the alerts being dismissible before and you want to get rid of them. You say, what happens? Well, you can pick them up again from the tab there to say, hey, I found my dismissed alerts. You can reopen them all as a batch. So if you accidentally got rid of something, you said, oh, this is in the way. And oh crap, what was that one? I need to look at this again. You can open your alerts pane again. You can look for those recently dismissed ones and quickly get them back. Reopen them all as a batch or reopen them individually.
I will admit I've done that several times. I will go click happy and click the wrong button. I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to dismiss that comment on a Google Doc or something. I need to go find it again, bring that back. So that'll be very helpful for me. But yeah, again, little details, little polish. Hopefully people are enjoying what they're seeing here. Oh, I should mention people maybe saw there's a new containers section there that doesn't have the experimental XC bit we talked about. So that's nice to see in the nightlies. But I would be curious to get people's feedback. If people are running the nightlies and trying it, give this a whirl. Again, hopefully your system doesn't have a lot of alerts, so you're not seeing this kind of colorful light up everywhere. So it might be a while before you throw a disk or have a failed replication job or something because of a network disruption. But when you do see it, provide that feedback. Yeah. We'd love to just get some impressions from folks on the ground to see how this helps them.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you are running a nightly image on your dev and test system, hey, maybe it is the kind of system you can mess with and deliberately break. We're not saying we've had the most errors that we've ever shown on there, and it's definitely not a competition. But if you're one of those people who says, hey, what I want to do is see if there's like an overload somewhere. How many, if I push this many errors, something breaks in it. And that's the kind of edge case that you wouldn't find until you get a really broken system in reality.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able and willing to simulate something like that beforehand, like I said, break stuff on your test system, break stuff in dev. Don't break it in production.
Yeah, please. Good stuff. Okay, Chris. Well, thank you. I think we got some questions here, though. We've been saving up some for a few weeks, and we get busy, we get talking. Now it's time to go see if we can sift through some of the backlog here.
Yeah. So here's a good one, and it came in. This has been quite a persistent ask, and I think it's the same person because it's the same question over and over. It's we'll use the YouTube handle, which is Bori Shackler, who asks us one of many times, will we have VirtioFS support for VMs? So this is basically being able to just directly map a directory off your host into the VM. Just minimal translation. It's a lot closer to like an LXC or a Docker volume bind. Obviously, because we're running ZFS, you have to have ZFS supporting your guests. So, and I made the throwaway joke about that last time saying, hey, I'm going to put OpenZFS on Windows, start playing with VirtioFS inside of VM. So, hey, what do we think on this one, Chris? Is this possible here?
It's possible. I guess it's just the question of when it's the right time to do it. So I have this saying in engineering, we can do a lot of things, but we sometimes forget to ask the should we do a lot of things, right? And I put that in that category. Is it mature enough? Is it ready? Am I going to be just creating a bug? There we go.
Might call for a spreadsheet, Chris.
I might call for a spreadsheet to go look at it. So obviously, go voice your support for that. I think there's a feature request already open in the feature request section of the forums. Let's get some traction there, see how many people want to use it. But at the end of the day, it's a maturity thing. There's an awful lot of these technologies where, sure, we could go throw it in the product, but if it's a bug factory, if it potentially puts data at risk, it's just not quite mature enough yet. We're going to be a little more conservative and hold off. Now, I get it. Folks like to play, so you can always find workarounds and go do things that is not supported by TrueNAS. We don't recommend that, obviously, for any kind of production data. But for us to bring it to the masses, we have to be willing to kind of stand behind it and say we're willing to go look at bugs when they get submitted as well.
Yeah, like I know there's I think there's a Rust daemon out there that's gotten some attention in that feature request. People have been posting about the different workarounds. The feature request that exists did start back in April of last year, so it was related to I think it was the Incus initially implementation for our VMs, and it later got switched around to back to the libvirt one. The kind of challenge here is that if you put a VirtioFS into a VM, that VM's not going to have any real knowledge or ability to respect any locks that you put down at the host OS level. So you could potentially have issues if you're also sharing that data set with SMB or NFS at the same time, which I assume is a lot of people's goal when they're saying, hey, I want to have, VirtioFS into a VM, and it might also be that you could splat your permissions pretty easily. So it's one of those things like Chris said, we have to make sure we're not going to give people a lot of opportunity to foot shoot with this by accident.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a cool idea, though. I mean, I like it. It reminds me of when we were doing Virtio 9P back in the day and playing with that, which runs over the network. So not the best. This doesn't run over the network. It's doing everything in Fuse, which is pretty cool. But again, it's just a maturity and when there's enough demand for it, enough use case. And since Chris pointed out, a lot of people will be tempted to use this with SMB and NFS. We got to make darn sure it's going to do the right thing. And again, not cause any accidental foot shooting where people are saying, oh, I munched my data.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, stay tuned. Again, voice your support for it on the feature request. If you play with it and we have enough evidence that it's stable, it'll be time to reconsider and take a look.
Cool.
All right. Okay. So I'll read this next one, Chris, if you don't mind. From Outrageous Otis, 454. Sorry, I got these new glasses. Not quite dialed in yet. So, with what you're saying about AI, not sure if it was clear. Is this seeing more AI apps and more baked in ROCm support? Great, thanks in advance.
ROCm is AMD's, I can't remember the abbreviation off the top of my head, but it's like their translation layer, I believe, sort of like for running CUDA things on AMD and running general purpose compute AI workloads.
Radeon Open Compute.
There is Radeon Open Compute module. It is a hell of a moving target right now. There's been really rapid iteration in that, especially with, the RX 9000 series and the Strix Halo stuff. It's a really big moving target. We'd have to look at some other possible way to do this. Maybe this is another case of like you'd need a system sys extension on top of it. But then somebody's going to say, hey, what happens when you put an AMD and an NVIDIA in the same system? Probably one of those things that's going to require a bit of ugly hacking initially. But it sounds to me, Chris, like I might have an excuse to buy a Radeon now and throw one of those and start messing with it. As far as like, does it mean more AI apps? I mean, we do have things like Ollama and really anything that can leverage a machine learning or something like that. Like Image has machine learning modules in there, if you consider that AI. There's nothing really saying we will or we won't. It's just a matter of, hey, if people want to throw it in the catalog, put a pull request in to say, hey, make this a community app. Most likely, if we don't have a reason not to, we probably will merge those in.
Yeah. Apps are pretty low risk in the sense that we can do some crazier things when they don't actually modify the host and can run containerized. Now, I haven't gone back and run Llama in a while, Chris, with the Intel GPU. I did that for a minute. This was, feels like a lifetime ago. It was probably like 6 months ago. But I did play with it. And at one point I did kind of sort of get it working, but it wasn't the best. It was kind of flaky at the time. And, the support was a little rough. I don't know if since then Ollama's merged in the full Intel support, because I had to run a fork of a fork kind of thing to find one that worked. The NVIDIA, I ended up putting an NVIDIA on the box and it worked perfectly after that. So
shocker.
I have a feeling ROCm's going to be in that same situation for a while. So I don't know what the state of running LLMs on it will be for a bit.
Well, ROCm 7 fixed a lot of things, and it really, I think it opened up the market, which is why we're seeing a lot more push for it now, certainly. And then, Strix Halo helped because they're like, hey, would you like 128 gigs of, LP DDR5X easily available? Now, that stuff, again, because of the, Rampocalypse or Ramageddon, whatever you want to do, those chips, again, everything's gotten expensive. So we'll have to see if it's something we could do. But like I said, it's quite a bit of a moving target. We'd need to look at doing it, like Chris says, make sure we're not going to make another bug factory in there before we add this, especially when we're talking about doing like overlay systemd extensions. Challenges there.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb also is to watch the upstream Debian repos as stuff gets added, and we do our yearly releases now, which we talked about last week. That's kind of our opportunity to go pull in all the latest packages, and as long as the packages just kind of sort of work, then we can have a discussion about, is it time to go merge some of those into the base system image.
Exactly.
Okay. Hopefully that'll become a thing in the future.
Yeah. So here we got a question from Domaro, I think is how you would pronounce that. He asks, can we get some dashboard temperature readouts for additional components like HBAs and NICs? He says, I have a Chelsio T5 NIC, and I see it under sensors output. I see my HBA under a more recent version of StoreCli 64 because apparently the one that we package in there doesn't recognize his HBA. He says, I'd love to see this for reporting on long-term temperature monitoring. He's got a second question in there, but let's jump out and talk about like temperature reporting of components here, Chris. Like I know we do that for the drives, and we got CPU temperature monitoring. What do we think of maybe like extending this to other components, provided that they're handled politely?
I think so. So we haven't really touched the reporting section of the backend right now. It's all still based on net data in TrueNAS. Now, we do have some plans. It's not going to be in 26, so hold your horses before you get too excited to go and really beef up that section of TrueNAS, because there's a lot more telemetry we'd love to be capturing in the background so you can get good reporting over time and good data, constant data streams where we can go and look at, again, all the temperatures, all the aspects of drive performance, latencies, all those good things. So we have some of it in net data today, and it works. It's good for what it is, but it's an area we know we could potentially do a lot more in. So that's high on our wish list of we should get to this. I have a feeling it'll probably be closer to 27 before that lands. And then this would be an opportunity to go and say, okay, what other sensors do we have that we can grab data from and put in our time series database and make available to reporting UIs and alert systems and AI analysis and all that other stuff down the road to surface potential problems.
Exactly. I mean, the short version of this is if you think your NIC or your HBA need cooling, they probably do. Especially if you're running a tower style chassis and you've got a 10 gig or faster NIC, or you've got like an HBA in there, give them a little supplemental cooling. Those things were normally meant to live in rack mount server chassis that measure, linear airflow in feet per minute. So they've got those big loud fans, trying to achieve liftoff under their own power, shoving lots and lots of air through the system. If you've got a tower that you've built that's tuned for silence, maybe give your HBA and your NIC a little supplemental cooling. But
yeah, no, I've done some crude things, strapping different fans into different places into some of my homebrews. Look, I've committed sins in the day. Like, been there, done it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's if it's dumb but it works, it really wasn't that dumb.
Yeah, no, it got me the airflow I needed and it cooled an HBA off, so I was happy.
Absolutely. So there's a little bit of a lead-on question here, just saying, hey, a little bit of a bug to report. He says, I have a serial console on my machine. I had to pass a grub command to get it to output on the TTYS1 instead of TTYS0. Maybe that's a challenge that we got to fix in our code. Look for something that's hard-coded. I think all of mine show up. The systems that I have that have serial output are all at TTYS0. So we need to find a system. Maybe we'll reach out and ask you exactly some details about your hardware there, Domaru, and say, let's figure out one that we can use as a good test case, because obviously the first step in fixing a bug is us being able to reproduce it. So if we can't do that, it's going to be challenging.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's worth taking a look into.
Okay. Well.
All right. Next up,
yeah.
Elephant in the room, Scale from Truth D2E. It's widely considered that Scale was called that because it would indeed allow TrueNAS users to scale out instead of TrueNAS Core that scaled up. This clearly became a wider issue when Gluster was removed from the product. Given also the move away from Kubernetes to Docker, does that mean TrueNAS has no plans in the near future to support clustered environments? Personally, having the ability to cluster SMB and perhaps NFS would be my preference, given that TrueNAS is first and foremost a storage product. HA in a single box is one thing, but having HA across different locations is clearly better. So, I mean, that's a good question. That's something we haven't probably talked about in some time. And you're correct. Originally, we did have aspirations of using Gluster. And, there's a lot of history there. You could probably go back in the archives and hear some of the post-mortem of that. Bottom line is Gluster is no longer actively maintained and isn't going to be viable for us in the future. Does it mean we've backed away from scale out? You mentioned Kubernetes and Docker. Okay, so there's an interesting thing. We did have Kubernetes in the base product at one point. And there was some loose idea of maybe we will allow a scale out setup of Kubernetes. But at the end of the day, it was overkill for the vast majority of our users. The number of people who would be doing that was so fractionally small compared to the wider fleet who just want to run Docker apps. It didn't make sense to carry all that overhead of Kubernetes. And it's a pig. It's big. It's heavy. There's a lot of knobs and things that 99.9% of our users will never touch or care about. So we have to make a choice on what's better for the vast audience, right? And Docker is a much better fit. Now, on the storage side, clustering, it's something we're always talking about internally and looking at here. But the bottom line reality is we got to find the right technology that fits the bill. And anybody who's looked at this or played with cluster solutions, especially in the open source space, knows there's a bunch of different options, but they have a long list of caveats. There's a lot of asterisks everywhere on this isn't supported or that doesn't work as well, or here's where to watch. And again, it's about who are you really serving? Who's your target audience? And so it has to be a separate product almost at this point to go after that smaller niche audience who says, yeah, I do want to take on the complexity of running a full-blown cluster and dealing with that in my home lab.
Yeah.
Even in the enterprise, we're seeing people move away from that.
Yeah, and the challenge is that, again, we don't want to do anything that's going to be like a big step backwards or a compromise on sort of that core promise of TrueNAS, which is, the safety of your data. We want to make sure that we have a solution that's going to integrate correctly with, the snapshot behavior of ZFS, the replication capabilities. Even all the stuff as granular as like the, work we did for ACL's permissions and things. We don't want to just throw something in there that has a bunch of, like you said, caveats and asterisks where you say, oh, as soon as you turn clustered mode on, all of a sudden, all of this stuff that you took for granted as core functionality is going to, potentially break on you or guaranteed will break.
Isn't there? Yeah. It just isn't present. Like it's just not a thing. In that
and sometimes you might say, is this a case of us letting perfect be the enemy of good? Well, I mean, when it comes to like data safety, data integrity, I don't think that's a compromise we're willing to make. I think we want to make sure that it is your data is perfectly healthy. Good enough isn't good enough.
And it's something we also have to pay attention to the market and where the industry is going as well. So this again this has been a long-standing conversation we've had here internally and with external folks as well. Back in the day, you had to run a cluster for a lot of reasons. You couldn't get enough performance, you couldn't get enough capacity in a namespace. Well, hardware's changed a lot since then, and we're currently seeing a lot of customers in the enterprise world displace and remove clusters because of the complexity overhead of, we don't want to have storage admins babysit this thing, because it's hard. It's a much different engineering challenge to solve when you're trying to coordinate between a bunch of different disparate compute nodes and everybody's active. It creates a lot of new bug factories, for lack of a better term. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong and will go wrong. You have to be willing to deal with. And over time, as the hardware's gotten better, more powerful for the performance side, but then also as drives have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, we're seeing a lot of folks say, oh, wow, that system that I spent, a fortune on 5-6 years ago to get a cluster that gave me the petabytes I needed, I can do in one box now for a fraction of the cost with better performance too. Because there's also this little physics problem you don't think about on the performance side. As soon as you go to clustered mode, you have to have things like integrity be good, which means you have to have sync rights, which means you have to send a lot of traffic, not only out of your system, but over the network, get acknowledgement, all the round trips. What happens when it goes wrong? There's just a lot of little things that you have to take into account and factor in as soon as you go to a clustered model. ZFS does that all internally under one roof, so to speak. And it's been perfected. It works really, really stinking well. So if anything, the bar is maybe too high because we have it so well with ZFS, which is a good thing. Like, I'm not complaining. That's what we all want, is we want rock solid, stable storage that scales up, to a zettabyte of storage potentially. And as the hardware keeps getting bigger and bigger, I know we talked about the WD roadmap for drives just this last episode, Chris. What was it, 140, I think they said, is on the roadmap for 2030 and beyond. So
yeah, I'm already reserving the right to make the WD-40 joke when they release that one. That is going to happen. That is going to happen.
Copyright trouble, Chris? Is that trademarked? No, that's good. But no, again, seriously. So we have to also look at the big picture and what's going on in the market, and is there enough demand? Because it's a big endeavor. Like, it's one of those things. If we're going to do it, you have to do it right. You have to commit to it, and you have to own it, and you have to be willing to go chase down every little edge case and every little bug. There's file systems engineers involved to get to, make sure everything's solid and stable, and then go add the missing functionalities when you don't get your snapshots or your POSIX ACLs. So anyway, not to say we don't want to go do something like that. It's just got to be the right solution before we're willing to go embrace it.
Yeah, like you said, you used to need a cluster to get a petabyte, and now you can get a petabyte in 1 U if you want it.
Yeah, that's sick.
It's a matter of scale. Yeah.
Yep.
Pace of technology is pretty amazing at times, even if sometimes it's difficult to afford on the initial release. Well,
sure.
Well, that was a good episode. I'm glad we got to see another sneak preview of all the exciting things coming up in TrueNAS 26. Again, if you're going to be experimenting with the nightlies of it, please do let us know. Give us some feedback in the comments on our forums at forums.truenas.com. You can also email us at t3@truenas.com. Give us your feedback on the product, on our podcast, on anything else you'd like to do. Thank you again. Please, again, do those usual YouTube things, because otherwise I'm going to have to, barricade my door and keep Chris from taking my ECC RAM.
I'm coming. I've got the stacked non-ECC memory right here, ready to go.
Yeah, not happening.
The dark side, it's fine.
No, not happening. I will use non-ECC on my gaming machines and wholly own my lack of skill in that front, and that's as far as it will extend. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you. Please, again, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and share this video with your friends, your technically inclined coworkers, and all those other exciting things. And Chris and I will see you next time.